everyone. Thank you for joining us. As per my clock, it says that we are at the top of the hour and it's 3 o'clock. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I see a couple of people that are joining us that have been a part of the journey from the time we started UEEI in 2017. And we would really want to take this opportunity to say thank you. It's been such a long journey to get to where we are today. We've engaged consultants, we've had conversations with the local ecosystem in Uganda, around the world. We've collected feedback for so many people, and right now, today, we are here to finally launch the Uganda Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Initiative Phase 2. Thank you for being a part of this journey, and we really hope that this is the beginning of even a longer journey with us. As you know, is that from the onset, we've always said that we wanted this initiative to be for and by the local practitioners in Uganda. And so we are hoping that today, through this specific call, we are going to use this opportunity to introduce you to the Ugandan Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Initiative Phase 2, and B, give you clarity on how you can be a part of this initiative from today going forward. And to just emulate that spirit of localness, we are going to introduce you later on to the person that is leading this initiative, Ronald Mukasa. And anyone who knows ANDE in East Africa, this is the first time that we've had someone to be based out of Nairobi. We just wanted to go with the spirit of the project and show you how committed we are to ensure that this is a locally led, locally run, locally owned project from the onset. Without much further ado, I would want to spend a few minutes just walking you through the agenda of today. So we are going to start with presentations from our regional manager, East Africa, to just give us the context of how this initiative fits into the bigger ANDE picture. We will then invite Ronald to introduce us to UEEI Phase 2 and what it stands for. Thereafter, we have a team of local practitioners who are going to walk us through a session to give us sort of like the state of the current state of the Uganda entrepreneurial ecosystem. And at this point in time, we will invite you, the audience, to be a part of this and ask questions through our chat box. And then finally, we will end the session with a call to action. And as I mentioned, all this to ensure that we all understand what the initiative is about and what we can be and how we can be a part of. I'll also to spend a few minutes to talk about some of the rules that we intend to adhere to during this session. And the first rule is that I am going to kindly request all of us to be off video, but not now, once Miriam starts. And then the second piece that I'm going to invite us is to be on mute at all during the entire session. The third piece is that we are also going to invite you to chat, to communicate with us. So if you have any questions, if you have any concerns throughout the session, please communicate this to the ANDE team through our chat box, and to just ensure that we are all comfortable with using the chat box functionality. I'd like to invite us to just go to the chat box right now and type hello in your local language, and I will start with my Swahili, so I'll just go there and type and say habari. So just do this so that you can all test the use of our chat box. And that's, Liz decided to also be from Kenya. She's also typed habari. I can see Makdiri from someone from Shona. Masikati from South Africa. Thanks, Sekai. Oh, there are a lot of Kenyans. I'm not seeing Waverly. No one is saying Waverly here. There's no Ugandan. Ronald, represent your people. Oh, I've seen, no, Anthony, you can't say that. You are not from Uganda. Oh, Horo, I can see that. Oh, Waverly is not hello. Thank you for the correction. Thanks, Hans. I see you said Waverly. And thank you for that. So Mulimuta, that's one I've had. I hope I should say Mulimuta back to you. I know that's one of the Ugandan dialects. So thank you for that. So throughout the session, use that chat box if you have any questions. And then finally, let's all contribute, let's all be proactive. And at this point in time, I'd like us to move into our first. And I'd like to invite our senior regional chapter, Marianne Ochola, to take us through our first session. Marianne, please take it away.
Thank you, Katuchi. Mulumutia, mulimutwa, muevare, habari zenu. Thank you very much for joining us today. When we last met in September 2018 to launch the findings of the Uganda Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Phase 1, the world was a very different place, yeah? 200 of us met in a hotel room in Kampala. About 80 of us met in a hotel room in Gulu, huddled together, right? Something in groups, something that you cannot see now, to share our ideas, our hopes, and our dreams for Uganda's entrepreneurial ecosystem. It was clear to us then, as it still is now, that there is an abundance of entrepreneurial talent in Uganda. Talent that has seen hundreds of ventures formed year in, year out, but because of insufficient support, uncoordinated support, and other challenges within, external to the enterprise, these ventures are not able to celebrate their second year birthday. It was clear to us then, as it still is now, that with a median age of 17 years of age, I still, my eyes still pop every time I hear the median age for a lot of countries in Africa. It was clear then, still is now, that entrepreneurship is going to be a powerful tool when we think about job creation, when we think about how we're going to meet the social and the material needs of our communities. It was still clear then, and still is now, that entrepreneurs are not going to be able to do this alone. So we understood the problem from your perspective. We spoke to hundreds of entrepreneurs. We spoke to tens of enterprise support organizations and other actors that work to support entrepreneurs. We understood then that the only way we are going to be able to address these constraints is through a coordinated approach, a multi-stakeholder initiative where everyone is involved, but all of us looking to support the entrepreneur. And the premise is twofold, and I'll use proverbs because that's how we best communicate this part of the world. That one, it is the one that is in the house that knows where the house leaks. It is not the person that's living outside your house, right? And the second proverb, and this is more common, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, then you go with others. So in our 10 years, working as a global voice for the small and growing business, ANDE has continuously advocated for an ecosystem approach as the only sustainable way, one, to design programs targeted at entrepreneurs, and two, to implement these programs sustainably. So the world that we knew may have changed, right? But our resolve and our commitment has not. In fact, the challenges that we had are still there, but now they've been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. So even more today. So if we had resolved them today, twice as much. And in all of you logging in today, despite the challenges around convening, back then people had flown from all over the world, but here we are today. So in all of us logging in today, I think this is testament to that commitment, that we have a shared interest, a shared dream in seeing the Uganda entrepreneurial ecosystem thrive, to the potential that is Uganda being the most entrepreneurial country in the world. So karibuni, welcome. And we are excited and delighted about the work ahead, and most importantly, to working with all of you. So thank you, and now I'll invite Ronald to take it away.
Thank you, Marianne, for that submission. I think she has helped us see where we are coming from. It seems like a long time ago. I think COVID has made everything seem a bit further on in the past, but this was just 2 years ago. In 2018, we were actually working on this, and some of you are on this call were part of this as respondents, part of you are part of the research team, and we're excited that today we are seeing UEEI phase 1 turn into UEEI phase 2, which is the initiative which is going to bring this to life, this work which we identified. Now, my task is to simply highlight where we are coming from and where we want to go. So I'll start off by quickly just sharing with you the program which we have today. We have already started, and we are at a point where we just want to get some introductions to where we want to go as UEEI phase 2. And during this period, we'll also have an opportunity to hear from some of our promoters, Agidius Foundation and Small Foundation, and then we'll get into a panel, and after that panel, we will get into the Q&A, and then we'll have a feedback session and a call to action a little later. So to start us off, I'm going to just request our promoters to simply just give us a word as to just quickly share with us for a couple of minutes about where we are going and where we are coming from and how we should look at this journey. Nicholas, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ernd, and it's great to be here. Of course, it'd be nicer to be in person, but it's good to see so many people have come. Agidius is a family foundation. We're based in Switzerland. We've had the privilege of being able to support a range of programs, both in Kenya and Uganda, around small and growing business. And over the last 6-7 years, as we've gone on this journey of supporting SGBs, we've noticed that it's increasingly important to work not only with individual interventions, individual organizations, but to encourage and nurture an ecosystem whereby local organizations can collaborate together more effectively, they can connect with each other, they can complement each other, they can support each other in order to provide more effective services, greater access to finance, more support for small and growing businesses. And so we're very happy to be one of the promoters of this initiative. We're very happy to provide some of the oiling of the wheels, but recognize that the joy of being a funder is we don't get to do hard work. The hard work is done at the local level by people on the ground who understand, as Marianne put it, where the leaks are in the system in order to build a much stronger, vibrant ecosystem and house in which to live and to support small and growing businesses. Thanks.
Right. Super. Thank you, Nicholas. I'll also quickly invite Liz to make a couple of comments. Liz from Small Foundation.
Thanks, Ronald. And it's just so great to see this day has arrived, that we're able to launch phase 2. Really excited about the conversations we're going to have today. My name's Liz Wilson. I work with Small Foundation. I'm a senior executive with Small Foundation, and we're an Irish philanthropic foundation, and we support the development of rural business ecosystems across sub-Saharan Africa in different ways. We are so delighted to be co-funding UEEI because, a little bit like Marianne and Ronald and Nicholas have talked about, we really want to support the creation of spaces where you, the experts, the business people, the policymakers, the researchers, and others from across Kampala and Gulu can come together. And we're really hoping that you'll find new ways through this initiative to connect and hopefully collaborate to support small and growing businesses across Uganda. And I loved what you said, Marianne. I really would like to kind of draw on that again. We at Small Foundation truly believe that those in the Ugandan ecosystem know best where your house is leaking, and really connecting across the ecosystem bringing together actors who are expert in their areas across the ecosystem is a lot more powerful than us all trying to solve problems individually and in silos. And we're really convinced that now more than ever, small and growing businesses are playing a vital role in our global collective economic future. So no pressure, but we truly believe that the world is willing you all across Uganda to be successful and show us how to ensure that small and growing businesses can really thrive in your economy. And I'm sure others will learn from that too. Absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to be here. I want to signal that we've got other members of the Small Foundation team, Thomas Caffrey-Oswald and Gwen Beeman joining today as well, because we're all really eager to celebrate this launch and also hear from the experts in the Ugandan entrepreneurial ecosystem. But I don't want to finish without saying a huge thank you to the ANDE East Africa team. Particularly would like to thank Ronald and Marianne and Katuchi, who we've already heard from today, for really the hours and years of dedication to this initiative and really trying to do some innovative work to figure out how we can move forward together. We're so grateful for your energy and also the thought leadership of the team and the Argidius Foundation on this work. So I'll hand back to you, Ronald. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you, Liz. Liz and Nicholas were part of this journey from the beginning, and we're excited that you have stuck with this journey to make sure that we are starting off with phase 2. So quickly, I'm going to run through a couple of ideas of where we are coming from and where we want to go. So I'll just share with you quickly about an introduction of UEEI. I'll talk about phase 1. I'll talk about the dream we have, and we will have a call to action a little later. So like I'm going to just share with you what phase 2 is about. I mean, what UEEI phase 2 is about, why UEEI phase 2, and then we will also have an opportunity to discuss who the promoters are, those you have met, and when we'll have an opportunity to discuss the key, why you are key to the success of UEEI. One of the things which we hope we can achieve is to tell you that the journey which we are starting can't succeed in the absence of you coming with us on this journey. So to start us off, I'll quickly share, I think this has been mentioned, Marianne talked about this. So UEEI is largely a multi-year, multi-stakeholder initiative that will comprehensively address most of the binding constraints that we identified during phase 1. So our goal is largely to have a thriving and self-sustaining entrepreneurial ecosystem in Kampala and Uganda. And we do know, as Marianne has mentioned, as Liz has mentioned, and Nicholas, we do know that in the absence of a thriving ecosystem, no one wins. The small and growing business suffers most when there isn't a thriving ecosystem. It means that it's looking for financing, but it can't find it. It means that when it finds financing, it struggles with certification. When certification is done, it may struggle with the taxman. When the taxman is done, it may struggle to be able to cross borders. This is why we need to come together to be able to say that at any given time, we are building an environment where every small and growing business, which can win, can be able to win. Business is already very challenging, and we need to make sure that winning is made simpler for small and growing businesses. So that's largely what UEEI is about. And why are you key to the success? You're key to the success of UEEI because, one, we want to have an opportunity to convene, engage, and connect. This is our first engagement, but we want these engagements to continue. So within the next 6 months, we're going to be in touch with you to see how we can continue engaging. And then we also want to be able to find and implement solutions, not just find the solutions, but implement them. We need to be able to say that I feel this challenge in the segment where I'm operating as a business development professional, but as a financer, you can be able to solve this. So we want to make sure that this initiative that we have is one which not only finds, but implements solutions. And lastly, we want to be able to learn and grow together. This is absolutely important. We need to be able to say that where we started, we know more and we have grown after a period of time. So in the next couple of years, I hope that we can be able to say, this is where we were at the beginning, but this is where we are right now. And we see that there has been progression and we have been able to win together. Now, I'll quickly highlight what happened during UEEI phase 1. During UEEI phase 1, we went through a comprehensive study. We worked with over 200 small and growing businesses, over 50 small and growing businesses in Gulu, over 200 here in Kampala. We worked with several stakeholders, over about 60 stakeholders, partners who are operating, financiers, business development professionals, people from the academia. And what we wanted to find is, what are the binding constraints? What are the problems that small and growing businesses are facing? These are the ones we found, and I will remind you about them. And then I'll talk about the pathways which we found. So one of them was the fact that small and growing businesses are perceived as risky to give finances. So every time a small and growing business goes to a bank to look for financing, they'll say, you are too risky for us. We want you to grow just a bit bigger so that we can be able to finance you. Yet you can't grow that bigger without getting that finance. This was also true even from the investment side, especially when you're talking about early stage, high growth SGBs. You find that many of them are viewed as not being commercially viable. So they are not finding the necessary capital for them to be able to grow. One thing we also saw is that business development services, especially at the early stages, are just not commercially viable. We want the small and growing business to pay, but it can't afford it, yet it absolutely needs the business development services. We also notice there's just a vicious cycle of a lack of records, which causes informality, and this informality causes the tax regime to treat the informal business in a way it wouldn't have treated it. I mean, we are glad today we have Vincent with us, and he was there then. And one of the big challenges is that if the business is informal, you don't even know how to support it. One of the big challenges is that if the business is informal, the tax regime can't work when it doesn't know what it's working with. Yet at the same time, that may be what causes others to say, I don't want to get into that state. So there we see those challenges happening. Then we certainly have the lack of role models. People who have walked this path, well-documented role models that we can be able to follow in this journey as small and growing businesses. So we recommended a number of pathways which we can be able to use during phase 1. And the pathways, one of the first pathways we are starting with is to convene the ecosystem and share information. One of the things UEEI is about is to simply bring us together and be able to share information. But certainly we noticed that we need to ensure that there are more incentives for businesses to become more tax compliant and maintain stronger records. We noticed that there is a need for appropriate financing, and there is a need for patient and affordable business development services. And certainly there is a need to make sure that the stories of those who have succeeded are shared and they are told. So quickly, when you look at what UEEI phase 1 was about, what UEEI phase 2 is about is to start to put these things into action, starting with the convening of the ecosystem. But furthermore, we also do know that things have changed. I think Marianne touched on this in her submission. Things are totally different. There are so many businesses which have gone out, and we'll hear from the panelists in a moment, but we do know that this is the reality which we are dealing with right now. And this reality demands us to behave in a certain way. So that means the ecosystem needs to rise up to the challenge, because we even have a bigger challenge. A spotlight has been put on areas which had been ignored earlier. And that is why we are excited that we are together here as we start this journey to be able to deal with some of these challenges. So the dream which we have is largely to ensure that, one, we can convene, and then we can be able to design an ecosystem initiative. The first period we're going to have is to just make sure we are hearing from you so that we design something which is locally grounded with roots, dealing with the challenges we are dealing with, so that we can be able to learn together, but also to build the funding for the broader ecosystem so that we make sure that there is more access to business development services. We make sure that there is more access to the support that businesses need, and these things need money. So that's one of the bigger goals that we have at the end of the day. So without, we're very excited that you're here. We're inviting you to join us on this journey. And today we are pleased that with us, we have 4 panelists who are part of Uganda's ecosystem to discuss this topic called the state of Uganda's entrepreneurial ecosystem. With us, we have Mr. Vincent Seruma, who is the head of public and corporate affairs at the Uganda Revenue Authority. You could call him the taxman. I remember during UEEI 1, he had so many questions because everything which doesn't work is usually blamed on the taxman. So Vincent, we're excited to have you. We have Rosemary Mutyabule, who is the Director of Business Development Services at Enterprise Uganda. She has an experience which spans over 20 years in the space of promoting small and medium enterprises and small and growing businesses. And we also have Jane Nakato, who is the proprietor of Kinder Care Schools. And Jane has a rich experience in how to build a business from scratch and how to keep a business standing, especially during this period in which we are. And we have David Wangolo, who is the investment manager at Pearl Capital Partners, to answer those questions on the finance. So we have a panel here. We're excited to have them. I'm going to bring them into action right now. I'll start off with Jen. I'll ask the panelists to get their cameras on so that we can see them, so that we can see that they're present. I'll give them a moment to just get the cameras on so that we can be able to get this show on the road. Panelists?
Ronald, can you ask the host to unmute our videos, please?
Okay, yeah. So Edna, just help me unmute so that we can see the panelists. I want to see their faces before we start our journey.
Jen, you should be able to view your video. Please try.
All right.
Still, I can't.
All right. Is Rosemary on, and Vincent and David?
Yes, I'm on. Rosemary's
All right.
on.
All right. All right. As we kind of great,
My
David, we
video
can
is
see you.
coming, but I can't.
David is there. Good. And Rosemary is there. Vincent, we hope you're also there.
Yes, I am.
Great. So Vincent is there and David is there, and we will give Jen a moment to join us.
Mine
so I
is
think
not there.
Oh,
Edna?
we can hear you. So
Okay.
I'll give you a minute so that you can also join. There, Jen is also there. Great.
Finally.
So, yeah, now that I can see your faces, I think Jen will start off with you. You are a small and growing business. You are in this game right now. It is one of the most crazy times. I know schools in Uganda have been closed since the lockdown. So as parents, we don't know what we're going to do with the children. But you are proprietor of schools, and as you look at the ecosystem right now, we want you to just give us your views, your ideas of what you see, the biggest challenges which we are facing today in light of what we learned in UEEI phase 1, but also in light of what is happening now. So Jen, why don't you share with us?
Somehow, I don't know whether
we can hear you, Jen.
My network. So if my network goes on, is it you?
Jen,
or
we can hear you right now. We can hear you.
So right there is one of our problems. The technology and the weakness of the technology and stuff like that, which we are going through as small businesses. In a way, I am glad that it is happening, so that it is not something we are just talking about, we are experiencing it. So thank you for this opportunity. As a small business owner and, well, a business owner, one of the most challenging experiences right now is, I should say, maybe the uncertainty, because nobody quite knows what is going to happen, because the government, the regulation, the regulatory authorities are coming up with several ways of compliance, especially during this COVID time. But small businesses are quite confused on how to go about doing their work. I'll give you an example. As a school owner, I do not know when the schools will open. So private schools are not earning right now. They were spending, they kept on spending until they realized they could spend no more. One of the things maybe we should learn from this experience is that for how long can your business run if you have an experience like COVID, if it goes on for another year, that. So schools have shut down, businesses have closed because they don't have enough funding. They don't have revenue. They don't have revenue. They don't have.
Sorry, Jen, we seem to be losing you.
Money to pay salaries. They don't have money to pay rent. How are we supported as business through the pandemic? The biggest thing is that is how the support could they could come up with advice on how you adjust. For instance, I run 5 schools. Continue with running the 5 schools? Will I even sustain that? How can you help a person who has a business here and a business there to continue? So those are some of the things we are experiencing. We are facing technology. Many people don't know how to use technology, for instance, but they have been forced to stay home and work from home. So as business owners, how are you monitoring performance, for instance? By staying home, am I working better? Am I working harder? Am I working longer, shorter hours? Am I even doing what I'm supposed to do? So which is which? What is better? Where should I go? Should we continue with working from home? Have we discovered that working from home is the best now that we are afraid of contracting COVID? Is the technology base enough for us to work at home? Are we compliant? Can we afford data? How are the data companies, MTN, Airtel, and all of those companies coming to support this challenge? Have they reduced their rates? Are they going to reduce their rates? How will the small businessman try to cash in given the technological challenges? If I had a small phone and now I am required to have a smartphone and a tab or a computer, can I afford to buy them and work from home? Is my business streamlined to work using technology? If I am a farmer, how can I use technology to work if I am required to stay at home? So those are some of the challenges we are facing and the uncertainties. Trying to find out, should I invest more? Should I keep my money with me? Where should I invest at this point in time? Maybe I should keep my money in the bank. Right now, is it feasible? Does it make sense? Where can I invest right now? I have my money in the bank before COVID. What should I do with the money? So the uncertainties, the borders are closed. How do we work with the closed borders? If my business requires me to export or import, how do I export when the borders are closed? So those are some, I could go on and on and on, but I thought I should just bring out some of them. Yeah.
Lovely. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jen. I think Jen speaks on the subject of uncertainty, and I think we feel the pain that every entrepreneur feels now, being uncertain about the direction which needs to be taken. So Jen has kind of laid the ground for us to start this conversation, and I want to bring in Vincent. Vincent, you come from the public sector, you come from a government agency, and a government agency which is in charge of taxation. However, I think the question here is, broadly from your perspective, how do you think partners can work together, ecosystem partners can work together during this period so that we deal with some of the challenges Jen has mentioned? Because entrepreneurs are going through quite a bit of pain. So how do you think we should move? And you from the government, you certainly need to take leadership in this. So just share with us what your thoughts are on this subject.
Thank you very much, Ronald, and all the participants for this UEEI, the second. My name is Vincent Seruma, and I work with Uganda Revenue Authority as the Assistant Commissioner in charge of Public and Corporate Affairs. I'm glad that we're having this discussion, which I believe I'm very passionate about. Picking it from what Jen has said and the challenges surrounding uncertainty, you largely see that there are gaps in terms of how these enterprises are run and how these businesses are run. For me, and from the government point of view, number one is the lack of structures for coordination and information sharing. I can tell you for a fact that the lack of structures makes it very difficult for anyone to actually benefit or even get support as we speak now. I can tell you that a number of people, she was talking about getting support, even technical support on how do you make sure that you can, run a lean structure during this time, and maybe you're able to scale it up. So the lack of structures within which these enterprises can actually collaborate and share information is a big thing. I believe that as partners, we need to make sure that we are able to encourage the association as well as the collaboration to particularly make sure that we can actually learn from areas of good practice or areas of best practice, but to also tap into the expertise that another enterprise actually brings on the table. So I believe that for me will be very key. The other area I see from the government point of view, you've hinted on it when you started, issues to do with the trust. In as much as government would want to come and help, the truth is with the kind of trust that exists between the enterprises and the government, it becomes even very difficult to know whom are you actually helping. How does that enterprise look like? What structures do they have? Even the issues of credit that we've already talked about. Is this person even willing to actually provide full disclosure? I can tell you from the government point of view, government this year in Uganda extended a number of incentives to support enterprises through this period of time. The one I can tell you which we are actually running now is encouraging enterprises to come through in terms of voluntary disclosure. But there are very few numbers coming through because they're saying, surely, will URA pardon my fines and the penalties if I come through? But this is a legitimate initiative geared towards making sure that those that have accumulated liability over time have an opportunity to have this liability offset going for, excuse me. But the issue of trust is very key. I believe that we need to maybe mitigate this by way of being very proactive in celebrating the early adopters, as well as celebrating those who are compliant from the government point of view. I feel last year, I don't know where some of you remember, we took a decision to celebrate the small and medium enterprises who had complied from the tax point of view. I can tell you, it was a very good feeling for those whom we celebrated. So maybe if people or the enterprises see that if you comply and fulfill your obligations, you can actually be celebrated. So I believe that that's very key, that we can actually promote. So I believe we need to encourage and celebrate those who are compliant. Then they can actually take the message to the other colleagues within the same sector or industry. The other issue for me from the government point of view is the levels of informality. I think it has been said over and over. And for me, the kind of informality now I feel we are experiencing is not informality because somebody doesn't know what to do, but there's also the intentional informality characterized by no business records, no financial systems in place. And of course, the enterprise will be quick to plead not knowing what to do. I believe that
Sorry, we seem to have lost. Yes, Vincent. Vincent, we seem to be losing you.
It does not in any
Sorry, we seem to have lost David, Vincent, as he shared on that point of informality. Possibly we'll get him back a bit later. I think he raised some key issues, especially in the space of trust, in the space.
Yes. Am I back?
Yes. Vincent, you're back? Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes.
Good. So you can just wrap up in a minute with that idea on that you're talking about on informality.
So for me, for visibility, I would like to see that we can collaborate together and encourage the enterprises to come through, and also to be able to be key providers of research-based evidence, which can actually be used in terms of making policy proposals. Because where there is research and evidence, it becomes very easy for that position to be believed because you have actually volunteered to be part of that research. Of course, the other that, as I conclude, is the tax literacy. I can tell you for a fact that there are very low levels of literacy, particularly for tax purposes. One of the things I can tell you is that some people don't pay tax, not because they don't want, but they don't know. Even when they know that certain provisions within the tax law allow them certain exemptions. And so that requires extensive and collaborative effort in educating the enterprises. I can tell you the tax regime, especially the income tax, stands on the principle that tax is paid when profit is earned. And if no profit, there's no tax to pay. But remember, you have to file your return. I thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I think you have you have actually put a light on where those challenges are. I was particularly tickled by this question of trust, because trust is one of those things. In its absence, you can't work with the taxman, you can't work with the financial institutions, you can't work with partners. And I think as ecosystem players, we need to work together to ensure that trust is being grown. And it's exciting to hear this from someone who is in the space of government, because as government builds trust, I think the trust levels ultimately get up. So I want to just quickly run to David. And David, you are in the finance space. You have been in this space for a while. And I guess one of the questions which needs to be answered is, as a professional who is in that space of financing, how do you think financial players can work together to ensure that we are dealing with those binding constraints which we identified?
Thank you, Ronald. Just a bit of an echo there, but I think I can go for the question. Just by way of introduction again, my name is David with Pearl Capital Partners. We have been in the Uganda ecosystem for quite a long time, since 2006, working with agribusiness of the small business growing enterprise nature, providing capital through development partners that we work with in an impactful way. So we quite understand and have learned a bit about this sector quite a bit, and would like to share our experience, together with the folks at ANDE who have supported this, and I'd like to thank you again for that, for localizing a big part of your work, not just in a regional way, but even in Uganda. So just speaking to the issue of capital, where should enterprises look for capital, and what kind of capital, should they look for? So in our sense, and having grown through this sector over time, capital, we clearly understand it to be, both monetary and institutional in nature. So those are two elements of capital. It's not necessarily that. In fact, the easier side of access is monetary. The most difficult side of access is the institutional side. By institution, I mean the management and competence of the enterprise, to manage capital and growth. And so those are the two elements that we closely, monitor or support small and medium growing enterprises to develop their competence to access more capital. And a combination of that, make sure that, we have the right kind of mix. It's also important that when people or small and medium enterprises are looking for capital, they look for the kind of people with the track record that has made capital work in the environment that's being allocated. So the traditional channels have been the banks, but there are a multitude of providers of capital, such as Pearl Capital Partners, who provide imaginative capital to enterprises for the purposes of patient growth and access by way of amount or structure, or by way of its management in the future. In terms of making it accessible, and I was listening to the previous speaker, Vincent Seruma, on tax. Accessing capital, as I said, is a more easier channel, accessing the monetary benefit of it. But what are the things enterprises must do to make themselves ready to access capital, I think, is the more important question. Fundraising or accessing capital should be part and parcel of enterprises' day-to-day operations, and they should not look at it as an isolated event. They should have ongoing, even quarterly, if I may say so, review of their financing needs and growth needs to be able to be up to date on their needs of today and why they will be required, years from today. And that makes them a bit more current in the environment of fundraising. In addition to that, they should be formal, and formality means, having structures through corporate governance by way of taking records and reviewing those records and making sure that their records are up to date. That way they improve their situational assessment or awareness as to their needs of capital and where that capital is going to be deployed, and will be more likely to receive attention from financiers such as ourselves in terms of how we assess the ability of these enterprises to access capital. In addition to that, there should also be independent verification in terms of working with suppliers, customers. It is easier to evaluate through an ecosystem rather than through an isolated event. And this word is very timely. An entrepreneurial ecosystem, for an enterprise, an ecosystem really relies on their independent verification that we can obtain from, say, suppliers and customers, or even bankers, to be able to evaluate, the readiness of that enterprise and how their track record has been in response to, use and application of capital. So that should be there, and it should be independently verified. And so plugging into an ecosystem is very important for enterprise in terms of making themselves ready for due diligence, on access. And I think also having the competent management is also very important for enterprise to improve access. Single proprietor or sole-led enterprises are usually the cases of what we see, and our goal is to transform them into enterprises that are sustainable and that can survive beyond their founders. And so founders who are intent on survivability and sustainability tend to ensure that there is a shared responsibility and risk and accountability within their enterprises. Those elements to us present quite good aspects of enterprises that can absorb and access capital and manage growth. And so those are the things we really look out for in establishing an ecosystem around an enterprise and determining whether they are ready to access capital and actually making it available to them. Because as I said, the money in itself is really the easier part. I think that's my submission in terms of, in terms of access and in terms of where these enterprises should go.
Thank you, David, for that submission. I think, David, certainly there isn't any study which is carried out where finance isn't mentioned as one of those key challenges. And I think some of the lessons which you have shared have clearly shown that there are possibly solutions we already have, but I think the question we have to ask is, how can we be able to deploy them at scale so that as an entire entrepreneurial ecosystem, this is the way we are doing business. Things like independent verification, how can that be done, and how can different partners support at different parts of the chain so that everything can be done in such a way that the small and growing business is getting the right capital, using it for the right purpose, and ultimately creating the jobs that we are looking for. So finally, I want to just jump to Rosemary. And Rosemary, you have been in the business development space for a while. And I think I wanted you to just make a comment on, as we go forward as the Uganda Entrepreneurial Ecosystem Initiative, what are your thoughts of ideas that we should look at so that we can be able to harness the energy in the ecosystem? And which things do you think we should put our eyes on as we start this journey so that we can be able to help the small and growing businesses which you have had, which have a wealth of experience supporting?
Thank you, Ronald. Good afternoon and good morning for others. It's really a pleasure for me to be part of this launch of UEEI Phase 2. And I'm very excited because Enterprise Uganda was part of Phase 1. We did the survey in partnership with Coltai and CDA, Center for Development Alternatives. And so I think Jane and Vincent and David have actually ably looked at the challenges that SMEs face and some of the issues. And so I will not go into that, but to say that I think there's no better timing than now to be launching this Phase 2, because the COVID pandemic has brought in a whole different dynamic into the game. And so as we speak now, our SGBs are almost on their knees. Most of them are on drip. And I think we've had, Jane has ably put that. And so I think it's very critical then that as we go into Phase 2, Ronald, you mentioned that I think that the first level 1 of your intervention is going to be convening. And so some of the things that I think that we can do, Phase 2 can do to strengthen the ecosystem is, 1, there's need to focus on aligning the diverse interests and capabilities of the various actors in the ecosystem. Now we know in that study we looked at, we did a mapping, and there are about 6 different players within our ecosystem that are all very important and impact on our SGBs. We have the public sector, we have the private sector, we have the academia, we have civil society, and then we have media, and then we have, of course, the funders, the financials, who are actually quite key. And so as phase 2 comes on board, it's very important to engage the different actors and to understand where they are and how they can actually align their interventions and interests to align with the needs and the current challenges of our SGBs. And so I think that it's very important. Public sector is quite a key player in our ecosystem, because from the study, it was realized that probably almost 80% of the challenges fall within the enabling environment, the enable domain, and that is entirely public sector. And so this is a very key stakeholder that needs to be involved. We need to engage public sector at high level to ensure that they play their role of dealing with the issues that were highlighted and the challenges that are being faced by SGBs. There's also, I think, need to clearly define expectations of the different actors, but also what are the responsibilities of these actors to ensure that everybody clearly understands what is expected of them, and to ensure that what we are doing, what UEEI phase 2 is doing, is not creating additional work, but just trying to help them align what they're doing to focus on the key client, the person at the heart of this game, who is the SGB. The second thing that can be done to strengthen the ecosystem would be collaboration. And I think that Vincent mentioned that there's a lot of individualism, that a number of institutions are playing their roles, but each one operating individually with very limited information sharing. And so phase 2 should come in to strengthen that collaboration amongst the different actors with a view to enhancing information sharing, but also streamlining and integrating their processes to eliminate wasteful duplication on the part of the SGBs. And this can be achieved, for example, through building platforms, thematic platforms of actors, say by domain, say for instance, the enable domain. That should be a platform on its own, where all the institutions, the actors that are related to licensing, for example, Uganda Revenue Authority, Uganda Registration Services Bureau, Uganda National Bureau of Standards, and many others. These should be brought together to try and streamline, harmonize their information, and make sure that they integrate, and as they digitize their processes, information is shared to avoid a situation where an entrepreneur, an SGP who wants, say, who needs to get any services from URA has to go through the process of registering, entering basic information. The same information is asked for at the Uganda Registration Services Bureau and National Bureau of Standards. So if this is harmonized, and so I think that one of the things that the platform that phase 2 can do is to strengthen that collaboration and information sharing to avoid wasting of time. So that as these institutions digitize, they should be able to cut out some of the unnecessary information that is requested by the different players as the SGBs go to them. This saves time and money on the part of the SGBs. But also, there is need to closely follow up on the commitments made by the actors to ensure action. We all know that usually when we have external influence like this trying to drive us together, unless there is somebody that is constantly following up on the different actors to ensure that whatever commitments they make are done, it's easy to lose the gains. And so to ensure there is a win-win, the UEEI phase 2 should focus on action, and therefore holding every actor accountable and ensuring they deliver on the promises. And probably the third point here could be, usually when we talk about issues related to SGBs, you find that SGBs are missing in these meetings. And so there is need to involve SGBs. SGBs must be as a center of the conversations related to issues concerning them. And so that I think that as we implement phase 2, it's important that whatever platforms that are being formed, platforms of actors, the SGBs must be at the center. And so I like that even in this launch, as we're launching this phase 2, that we invited KinderCare promoter, an SGB, so that she gives the rich experience, but also is part of the problem diagnosis, but also part of building solutions together that are relevant to the needs, but also providing feedback, current feedback on their experience with the ecosystem. So I think that it's very important that involvement of SGBs in the conversation is catalyzed, is maintained, and to ensure that there is a win-win for all. But also, like Vincent said, there is need to celebrate success made. I want to actually celebrate, because after phase 1, we engaged with the Uganda Revenue Authority, and so Enterprise Uganda was part of the program that was arranged to celebrate SGBs that had done well in terms of responding to meeting their tax obligations. And so I think celebration becomes important. So part of this, as we go ahead to build collaborations, to bring together stakeholders and align them, whatever successes that are made must be celebrated. And so partnerships become important also with the media and other players to make sure that the small gains are actually documented, they are shared, and this then will inspire other institutions to move along and make sure that they are also part of improving the ecosystem to make it easier for SGBs to operate. And yeah, so I think maybe those 3 points would suffice for now. But also, I think that as all this is done, it's important to keep drawing out attention, focusing attention on the binding constraints that are faced by these SGBs, especially those in the areas of funding. And so funding here, we're not just talking about debt, but also equity. And I'm glad that David has mentioned something about impact investing. We need to be able to support the SMEs, the SGBs, to be able to appreciate, first of all, what it means to get equity come into your business, prepare them to be investor ready. And that way, we are able to then help them address, balance the issue of debt and equity in their businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rosemary. Thank you, Rosemary. I think Rosemary has kind of wrapped up this discussion, which we certainly know we can't be able to complete. However, we are dedicating all the sessions for the next 6 months to digging deeper in some of the ideas that are coming out here so that we can be able to try to approach those solutions and possibly pick best practices, which other partners may already have that we can be able to take on. So I'm going to quickly give the panelists a minute each to just wrap up. We have a number of questions that are coming through. Some of them have been answered on the chat. Some of them haven't. But I'll ask Jen to touch on the question of which innovative solutions has she come up with as a business owner during this period so that she can be able to swim through this challenging time. Vincent, I'll give you a minute to also touch on that last tax question, which was asked, especially what initiatives have been put in place by URA to kind of deal with some of the constraints that you identified. David, I will ask that you kind of talk about some COVID-related strategies that have come up to address the day in which we are. Certainly things have changed. We need to be rethinking. So as an institution, what have you come up with to support small and growing businesses as a response to COVID? What strategies have you come up with? And then Rosemary, I'll also give you a minute to simply talk about generally what you think the ecosystem priorities are as a result of the pandemic that we are going through. So I'll give a minute to each of you and then we will wrap up. So I'll start off with Jen.
Thank you, Ronald. I believe that question came from Kiru Stephen. Which innovation have we come up with? And I'll speak for schools because that is where my biggest competence is. So what we did was, of course, to find out what online learning is all about. And we immediately went to the online platform. We looked at the different online platforms to be able to continue delivering a service to our parents. I should just say that the challenge we faced with that goes back to what I said earlier about regulation and compliance. And it also ties into what we have all been saying, collaborating, all the players to collaborate. This move to online classrooms was unfortunately frustrated by the actually thought it wise to let the international schools, for instance, continue learning online, and then the national schools were sort of stopped. And if you continue, we were told not to charge parents, which really beat our understanding, because the time taken for international schools to plan and teach and deliver the curriculum and everything is the same time the national schools take to plan and deliver. So if we are not working hand in hand with our bosses, let's say the Ministry of Education, if they don't stop to listen to us, to find out from us, how are you going to conduct online learning? What is required? How do you get data? How do they mark? How do they prepare? Why are you charging? Where does the money go? Those are the questions that we expected to come up, but unfortunately, still the regulator comes up and says, no, you shouldn't conduct online classes, period. But international schools should continue. So it really beats the whole purpose, and it brought a shaky environment in private business school owners. So the innovation is there. The schools have tried. The parents really wanted to go on, and some of them went on with the online learning, but with the absence of our bosses' go ahead and bosses' input, and the ministry's input, the innovation is killed. So yeah. It goes back again to working hand in hand to see together to achieve our goals.
Lovely. Thank you, Jen. I think Jen raises important the need for collaboration, why we need to work together, that we can't win, and sometimes opportunities to innovate are just not used because we are not working together. So Vincent, I'll give you a minute, and you quickly also wrap up with just a response to that final question.
Participants, the issue raised is about the new system we've rolled out, the eFRIST, Electronic Fiscal Invoicing and Receipting System. What this system seeks to achieve, first of all, is to make sure that there will be real-time data exchange between the taxpayer and URA, as well as a third-party actor, the person who is transacting the given taxpayer. The goal is to make sure that we can actually deal with this issue of information management. If done well, it should be able to ease decision-making on our part as URA, where a taxpayer makes a request for a tax refund, we should be able to take a decision in the quickest time possible. But also, once a transaction happens at the point of sale, that invoice or that receipt is transmitted to the taxpayer's accounting system as well as to URA in real time. But the system also can be used to link the taxpayers who import, that right from the point of importation, your stock can be transferred directly into the system, and you can actually transact, and also be very useful in terms of stock management. What we want to achieve is that eventually we would like to make sure that we can actually solve the issue of records using this system. And I'm glad that a number of taxpayers have taken up this. Who is affected now? For now, we are focusing on VAT registered taxpayers, and the deadline is 30th September. Going forward, depending on how it goes, we will expand it to other taxpayers. And in the meantime, we are focusing on the VAT taxpayers. Because why VAT? Because with VAT, you need proof of an authentic transaction that you've undertaken. If your VAT input and output is to be reconciled, especially if you are in a refundable position. So we've been having a lot of hassles with the taxpayers who submit, first of all, fake invoices, fictitious invoices. If you remember some time back, we had a lot of fraud in fake VAT invoices. And of course, some taxpayers were making false refund claims. So this system is also intended to make sure that once you submit that invoice, it's authentic, it's a legitimate transaction, and you will be able to take a quick decision in terms of giving you a refund in real time. So that's what that system seeks to achieve, among others. Overall, for us, I think,
thank you.
And plus the other question is education. Education, education. Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. I think this conversation has to continue, especially with you, Vincent. We have a lot to ask the taxman, don't we? I think I will quickly run to David. Also, just a quick minute to wrap up, and with that comment on some of your strategies, and then we'll move to Rosemary. David, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Ronald. I think what COVID has taught us is the ability to plan and project has been completely obliterated. There is just no sense in which SDGs, as they perform, on very thin human structures or structures, could have survived and continue to survive in this kind of environment, which we cannot anticipate when it's going to end. And so for a financier, the ability to survive is the most important thing. And survivability of a business is really in the balance sheet. And by balance sheet, what I mean is liquidity in the balance sheet to meet short-term obligations in this current period of time. And what we've done is to ensure that, the companies that we work with, and I'm sure many financiers in the industry, liquidity has been a major area of focus. To ensure that short-term obligations can be met or at least deferred. In addition to that, structures of kind of investments that we are making and will continue to promote are the type that encourage equity participation or debt, with opportunity to participate in the performance of the business. So that alignment of financing with performance is something that I would like to advance as something that, works for businesses, especially in this kind of environment, and something that we cannot foresee going into the future. So that is also very important. And as we slow down, and as we've slowed down, and we shall see continued slowdown because the year is coming to the end, I think the time that we should have been, actively generating revenues, we are, investing back in the companies through our technical assistance and BDS facilities to improve certain competencies within them, to be able to respond to the future and how we see the future evolving. So competence development, survivability, and balance sheet strengthening, I think should have been the issues addressed during this very, very difficult period of time, and something that we have learned to be, ongoing for the future. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And finally, I'll hand over to Rosemary to just wrap up in a minute, and then we can...
Thanks, Ronald. In terms of priorities, I think that there are two priorities right now. The first priority is survival of our SGBs. We've all heard how the times are tough, and most of the SGBs have actually depleted their cash reserves. They're actually sliding into bankruptcy. So I think by way of priority, it's very important to focus on survival of these SGBs. All these SGBs have statutory obligations. They are not earning, there's no income coming in, but there's statutory obligations. So they have the taxman at the door, they have NSSF that wants the employee remittances, most of them have debts, they have loans, and so the banks are waiting for their interest. And so I think that there is need to begin to engage the different actors to understand the plight of our SGBs and come up with some kind of relief. There is need for leniency, there's need for understanding of the challenges that the SGBs are going through. So survival is number one. Two, at a time like this, I think the SGBs need BDS, business development service support, because many of them are struggling and they were hit because they didn't have business systems. They were hit because they were still operating informally, as we've said, the business culture. And so there is need to intensify business support at this time to help these SGBs to adapt to the new normal, the new circumstances. They need to be able to adapt. They need to be able to revisit their value proposition, but also the business model. Times have changed, the market dynamics have changed, the customer has changed, and so there is need for them to adapt their model to the current circumstances. So I think those are the two priorities that need to be focused on now: BDS support and survival of the SMEs, of the SGBs. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Rosemary. I think the discussion is still ongoing. Clearly, where you have left us, businesses need to survive. I think Madame Victoria Sechtorika has just shared about why we need not to just celebrate those who are complying, but possibly give a hand to those who are sliding into bankruptcy. And these are conversations which we want to take to the next level. JB Waswa, thank you for your comment. We have picked it up. We want especially the question of we have seen the tenants and the landlords, and I think we'll just have a specific session on that to just deal with these painful challenges that we are going through. But I want to thank our panelists for the time they have shared with us. I want to bring the panel to a close here and to say that our next steps, as Faith has asked, our next steps are to make sure that we start having this conversation in smaller, possibly more targeted groups, so that we can be able to start not just documenting the potential challenges, but documenting the potential solutions and actively influencing for change to happen where it can. So those are our next steps. We're going to have convenings. We'll keep engaging all of you who have participated in various discussions, but the goal is to ensure that we are driving this to a direction of finding solutions. At this point, I'm going to ask Edna to share our we want to just deal with a quick survey for things which we haven't picked. Edna has just put the survey there. This is a survey which just wants to find out about you, to also find out how connected you are to the other participants in this session, and then to also pick your ideas on what we can actually do in UEEI going forward. We know that we have had just 4 panelists, but there are many ideas out there. So I want to give us some 5 minutes to do this survey. Please click and run through the survey. It takes about 5 minutes to complete, and then we will bring our session to a close. Let me request that Edna, you can just put the slide, and we take 5 minutes. I hope everyone has seen the survey is in the chat room. Just go to the chat and click that link, and then you quickly run through that survey to pick that information for the next 5 minutes, and then we will bring our session to a close.
that has participated in the survey. Before we wind up, we would like to invite our managing director to come and share some words with us. So Jenny, over to you.
Great, thank you, Katuchi. Thank you to Ronald and all of our speakers today. Today's discussion, I think, has really helped to highlight both the various challenges that small and growing businesses face in Uganda, but also the potential of collaborative action to address some of these issues for the entire ecosystem. I also want to thank the funders, partners, and participants who are part of Phase 1, as well as the Small Foundation and our Gideas Foundation for their continued support through Phase 2, and the entire ANDE East Africa team and others on our headquarters team who have been working together to design and launch this project. And I really want to thank all of you. If I've learned anything in my 11 years at ANDE, it's the power of coming together as a network, of talking and sharing ideas and resources and building collaborations and learning together. And we've heard a lot about that already today. As was mentioned already, this initiative has been a long time in the making, and the real work is really just beginning. But when we first set out on this journey, we never envisioned that we would be launching this phase in the middle of a global pandemic and the unprecedented time we are all facing. And so I really want to thank everyone for being willing to still come together for this work, and in spite of all of the challenges we are facing collectively and individually right now. But if ever there is a time to come together as a community and ecosystem, it is now. The challenges that small and growing businesses and entrepreneurs face are in many ways greater than ever, and we've heard a lot about that from our speakers together. But the opportunity that these business provides is as well. It's hard to know what the next year or 6 months or even week will look like in today's world, but when we think of recovery and rebuilding, we have a unique opportunity to do it differently. And Andy and our partners remain committed to this work despite the current challenges we're all facing. But we need you to be part of the process, to actively engage with us over the next 6 months, to co-create a path towards a thriving and self-sustaining entrepreneurial ecosystem in Uganda, to leverage the talent of Ugandans and the commitment of your organizations to be part of this work. So I hope you will continue to actively work with us together to build this next phase. As Ronald shared, we are going to be hosting a series of convenings following up on a lot of these topics and some of the others that were highlighted in Phase 1. And I really look forward to all of you being part of that and also to working on this with you together. So thank you to everyone.
Thanks, Jenny, for that. We appreciate your participation and guidance throughout the project. And as we allow everyone to continue their day-to-day, we will leave you by saying that even if you forget everything, remember that at the pillar of this convening or at the success of this initiative is for you to come together through our convene piece of the initiative. Ronald also mentioned that we'll get into a place where after we build trust, we will move into designing initiatives to address the challenges that have been identified. And as we do all this, we will continuously share information with you as it's happening and the learnings that you're picking out from it. And hopefully, eventually, we can get into a place where you're even able to attract funding to support the initiatives that have been designed. Thank you so much. We will send a follow-up survey after this session. And in the survey, we will kindly request you to go ahead and opt in if you want to be a part of our mailing list to actually get to learn about the different learnings that we'll be churning through the UEEI work. Thank you. Have a nice day. Thank you to the ANDE East Africa team that were actually not on video, you couldn't see them. Edna was behind the desk working on tech. Kome Karani, who recently joined us, was on social media, and Anthony was supporting with communication. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Bye everyone, thanks.